Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off, because today I'll be reviewing and paging through Malevolence for Pathfinder 2nd Edition from Paizo Inc. Is this horror-themed adventure guaranteed to put a chill in your spine? Or is Malevolence as creaky and leaky as that old house on the hill all the neighborhood kids think is haunted? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I'll be reviewing Malevolence for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. But before I do want to say thanks so much to all of you out there who've sent along kind thoughts and prayers regarding my recent triple bypass surgery. It's been just over a month. I'm getting a lot of strength back. My voice is starting to come back, and my voice has a little bit of oomph to it. It's not as just raspy as it has been for about the past month. And the doctors tell me that I am way ahead of the curve as far as most people who undergo the procedure. So, big thumbs up. Once again, thanks to everyone for all the kind thoughts and prayers. They really, really are appreciated. That said, today I am going to be reviewing Malevolence for Pathfinder 2nd Edition from Paizo Inc. It is written by James Jacobs, with artwork provided by Igor Krachenyi, Yo Furia, Sammy Khalid, Robert Lazzaretti, Artur Nakhokhin, and Hernanda Souza. The 72-page adventure is available right now in softcover for $22.99, or you can snag the PDF for $15.99. I'm also going to take a look at the flip mat that is available separately that carries an MSRP of $14.99, or you can grab the PDF for $10.49. So without further ado, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got Malevolence for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Before we jump in, do want to mention the fine folks over at Paizo Inc. were kind enough to send me this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang channel has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my thoughts about this adventure. These days, it's really important that you know that. So let's take a look at the back. We get a little bit of a breakdown about what is this adventure. Enter if you dare. The house stands abandoned on its lonely hilltop, brooding quietly for decades over the ruins of a once thriving town. No one has lived within its walls since the night a terrific storm flooded the coastal town below. Malevolence is a horror-themed adventure for third-level characters written by James Jacobs, featuring sinister new monsters, mysterious magical items and spells, and a fully detailed haunted house for players to explore, exercise, and endure. With an immersive method of researching the history of the mansion's macabre secrets through visions, dreams, and good old-fashioned investigation, Malevolence is ready to test the limits of any party's bravery. I definitely do like the cover artwork. Pretty cool. We got this this vampiric mist that's attacking. It's pretty cool. Pretty sweet. All right. If you're a player and you're hoping that your game master is going to run Malevolence, I definitely recommend tuning on out of this video. There are over 1,000 videos on the Gaming Gang channel. So feel free to go enjoy one of those rather than watching this, unless you want your experience spoiled. All right, so now it's just Game Masters and myself. So we're going to pop on in here. Do want to mention I am going to stay picture-in-picture up in the corner right here. So I am going to cut off a little bit of the upper left corner of the page up here. And I'm also going to skip some pages as well. So I don't want to like provide the entire adventure absolutely free in this video for people to screenshot. And believe me, as weird as it sounds, there are people who would do that to get their hands on an RPG release for free. All right, this is broken down into 3 chapters. First chapter is going to give us essentially the Game Master detail about how did we get here, what's going on, as well as the overall layout of the area around the mansion. There is a deserted town, which is mentioned but really not covered. As a Game Master, I would probably try to flesh that out a little bit. I think that would be pretty cool, especially if the player characters needed some sort of a base of operations away from the mansion itself. Second chapter is going to basically tackle the mansion. So the first 2 floors, there's a 3rd level with a few rooms on that as well. That's all in there. And then the 3rd chapter is the area below the mansion. There is a dungeon area, and that is where the player characters will face off against essentially the big bad and another big bad. And I'll get into that in just a bit. This is a standalone adventure for 3rd level characters to start off. By the end, they should be hitting around 6th level. So one of the things I'm going to point out is that I believe that this adventure will be a bit more difficult to present at the table than most Pathfinder adventure paths. And the reason is because most adventure paths have, so many chapters. It's usually like 4 chapters. And each of those chapters can break down to essentially a session worth of gaming, depending on how long you play. If you play 4 or 5 hours, you should be able to cover a chapter at a time. Thus, if you get together every week, you've got about 4 chapters in each adventure path part, and you're ready to move on to the next one the next month when it comes out. This is different. There are 3 chapters. There are all these different levels that the player characters can be going through. So there's nothing that means, that says, okay, well, they have to go through the 1st level of the mansion before they go to the 2nd level of the mansion or into the dungeon area below. There is a lot going on. There are a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of material and history and background that I think a lot of game masters will have a difficult time just keeping all of that in their head, juggling all that information. But there's a lot that I really do like about this adventure. I just want to point out that I think this is going to take a bit more prep than your average adventure path chapter for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So what's going on? Well, essentially, there's this alien entity which is kind of combined with this person, although the person, there isn't much left of the person. It is just essentially this alien entity. And there is a bit of a Lovecraftian vibe to this adventure, which I really do like. I really do appreciate that. I think it's very, very cool. For one, the Malevolence is essentially kind of 2 things. One, it's this alien entity that had been essentially trapped by this group of do-gooders who had trapped it, that it could no longer try to, essentially what its plan was to bring this sentient planet to Galarian, to eat Galarian, kind of like Galactus coming to swallow up the planet. So that is essentially this entity's game plan. So it's been trapped using this ancient artifact. On the other hand, we also have this minor noble who had fallen in love with a much higher ranked noble's daughter. And the other noble wanted nothing to do with Eosif Zarwin, who the Zarwin family is the mansion's owners. And basically what Eosif does is he sells out his family to the powers that be, saying that they're traitors, they're rebels, They really aren't, but he says they are. And they're all executed, and he's made a paracount, which I guess is high enough that the other noble is like, oh, well, yes, now you can marry my daughter. So Eosif was also seeking forbidden knowledge, arcane knowledge, knowledge that man was not meant to know. And his family had some books, and that was another reason why he has them executed as traitors, because he wants those books. And these books lead him to the location where this entity has been trapped, although there's really no mention of the entity itself. And he decides he's going to build a mansion there. And once the mansion's built, he unwittingly frees this entity who then permeates the mansion as well as the region itself. There was a town outside of the mansion, near the mansion in that region, and it was a thriving town, and the Malevolence basically has ruined it. It's destroyed it. People either died off or they fled. So I would actually flesh out that town. I think that would be a really cool addition. Something else I think is kind of cool is that Eosif had dealings with Amigo. So if you're familiar with the Lovecraft mythos, you know what Amigo is, or if you've played Call of Cthulhu, you probably know what Amigo are. And he was trying to obtain a brain cylinder from the Migo. I think that's awesome. Sadly enough, you don't get to include that in the adventure. The player characters will not encounter a Migo. Something I might change, because I think players who are familiar with the Cthulhu mythos or who play Call of Cthulhu will get a big kick out of that. All right, so we get to the point where we got the mansion. There's a couple of major hooks to try to use to bring the players on board in this adventure. I personally found the hooks to be kind of weak. That is one of the issues that you'll run across when you've got an adventure that is not starting at first level. You got to figure out a way to hook your players into the adventure. There's a lot of different things that you could do to bring them into this. So we've got the area around the mansion. There's not a ton going on here. It's a few monsters. Actually, one major monster there. So we get in chapter 2. This is the mansion itself. And there are a lot of cool set pieces and encounters in the mansion that I really like. But once again, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot that the game master is going to have to juggle. So to enter into the mansion, there is this like ectoplasmic barrier, which is to keep the psychopomps out, because you will encounter psychopomps in this adventure, and Eosif hated them, despised them. His wife actually thought they were muses, but he hated them. So there is this call, is what it's known as, to protect the mansion from avian creatures. All right, so we get into the mansion. One aspect of the malevolence that's going on in the mansion is that creatures and monsters have made their way into the mansion, and the malevolence doesn't control them, but it makes them think that they belong here. In fact, some of the monsters right here, we've got the chokers. The players will run across some chokers, and those chokers think they're servants, think they're the servants in the mansion. So also point out that the entire family is present in some way in this mansion. So we have Eosif, we have his wife, we have his twins. We also have Eosif's mistress and a child that was born out of wedlock as well. They're all present in this mansion. Now, one of the other cool aspects here is that the player characters are going to experience dreams and visions and phantasms. And there is a list of various different phantasms that the players can either, or the GM can either roll on or just choose. And it's going to actually unlock like research points about various topics in this mansion, be it Eosif or the entity itself or his wife or a lot of different things. And I thought that's very cool. You'll see that in the toolbox area here. So here is one of these psychopomps that the player characters can befriend. Okay, so I was talking about there's some pretty cool set pieces. So in this one room, there's a peek hole. And if one of the players goes up to the wall and they put their eye up to the peek hole, on the other side is the undead carpenter who has a drill, who is going to try to pop that drill on into the player's eye. Hey, come on. This is a horror adventure. I thought that was pretty wild. I thought that was pretty cool. So what is the big bad trying to do here? Well, Eosif is dead. So he is a ghost. But before he became a ghost, he murdered his family. And remember I was talking about the brain cylinder? Well, there's a brain collector. And what it would do, it would actually kind of fuse the brains of his wife and kids with Eosif. And that way he could be with his family forever. So that is his game plan. Unfortunately, he no longer has substance. So it's pretty much impossible for him to pull that off. All right. The brain clock. That's pretty cool. Essentially, the brain clock was a professor that Eosif really looked up to and learned a lot from. And he kidnapped and took his brain to experiment with. And it's in the brain clock. So just kind of flipping through here very quickly. Another cool set piece is there's a will-o-wisp, or as some folks like myself tend to refer to them as will-o'-the-wisp. And it'll attack the players. And one of the cool things is that it's not really affected by the malevolence. It's actually there to feed on the fear. And it's not trapped there by any stretch of the imagination, but the malevolence knows it's there, and the malevolence will actually assist the player characters as they fight the will-o'-wisp, which once again I thought that's kind of cool. All right, just zipping on through here. There's that undead brain collector. So there are different monsters. There's different undead. There is a good amount of investigation going on in this adventure, not to the extent like, say, a Call of Cthulhu adventure. And there is far more combat going on than you would see in most Call of Cthulhu adventures as well. But it is not just a meat grinder, thankfully. There are encounters that can only be, I guess we'll say, completed through combat, but there are others that quick thinking players will able to move beyond and successfully complete without having to resort to combat. So chapter 3 is going to be the area below the mansion. So there are 3 areas. There are some natural caverns. There's an ancient shrine, which is where the entity has been trapped, which it's not trapped any longer. And then there is some more modern construction from when the mansion was built. There's a little bit of a Fall of the House of Usher vibe going on in this adventure as well. If I were running this, I would probably have the mansion destroyed at the end, kind of in a nod to the Fall of the House of Usher. That's not necessarily part of the adventure, but I think I would probably go in that direction. So this is the dungeon level here. We got the Tangle Bones, which is a monster that if a lot of murdered bodies are located in one spot, they can kind of join together and animate. It's kind of cool there. Then we're going to get to Eosif Zarwin. Like I said, he is the big bad. So you're going to try to put him to rest. That's what the player characters are attempting to do. Now, as far as that entity, that evil entity, there's no way to kill it. Once again, very Lovecraftian. There's no way to kill it, but there is the ancient artifact. If it is replaced, if it is put back where it was, then once again, the malevolence, well, the malevolence is actually Eosif and this entity. So if you put the artifact back as the void mirror, then you will once again trap the entity. All right, so then we go into the toolbox. It's going to talk about researching. And we've got all these various different research topics, and you will earn points that you can spend to unlock more information about these various topics as well. And there are quite a few. So yes, here we go. So the entity is Chikuth, or Chikuth. Here they call it the Malevolence, but in the book itself, they say the Malevolence is actually a combination of Eosif and this entity. All right, then we get the brain cylinder. So we get some new items. Get some spells. There's the void mirror. That is the artifact that traps the entity there. We get a couple of new monsters, a couple of new creatures, I guess we'll say. And then that's it. And as I mentioned before, we got a map of the second floor. So that is the adventure. Real quick, let's take a peek at the flip mat, because I know a lot of people love to use miniatures and tokens in the role-playing games. I personally don't. I am a theater of the mind sort of game master. To me, I always found miniatures to kind of be a distraction for players. All right, so, of course, as you can see, I'm going to fold this out. So this is the first level of the mansion. And like all flip mats, you can write on this with marker and it'll wipe off. That's why you see there's a bit of a sheen because there's a finish to it. This is nice cardstock. Then we got the second floor as well. There is nothing for the small third floor area or the dungeon area. It's just the mansion itself without the third level. So that is the flip mat, and this carries an MSRP of $14.99, or you can snag it in PDF for $10.49. All right, let's swing on over to the other camera because I am going to share my final thoughts about Malevolence and give it a review score. So I like this adventure. I really do. Like I said before, I like the Lovecraftian vibe to it. I like some of the encounters. I think there's some pretty cool set pieces. And I think at the end of the day, there's enough creepy stuff going on that it makes for an effective horror-themed adventure. That said, I also pointed out that I think this adventure is going to be quite a bit harder to run at the table than most adventure path chapters would be, because there's no limitation what the players are going to do. They can go from the first floor to the second floor. They can make their way down into the caverns below. And that is a lot of material to be flipping back and forth to. And like, if you're a kind of game master like myself, I don't like to have to refer to books. I like to have a lot of stuff, bullet points that I've already got down through my prep work, so that I'm not constantly having to look back and forth into a book as far as, okay, so what were these special abilities these monsters had? What's going on here? So on and so forth. So I think that this will be a bit tougher to pull off at the table than most Pathfinder adventure releases. So there is that as well. But I do like the adventure. I think the adventure is very cool. I think that a lot of players will enjoy this. I think a lot of game masters who are very, very familiar with Pathfinder will probably not have that difficult a time. But I do think it's going to be more challenging to present at the table than you would think. All right. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give Malevolence for Pathfinder 2nd Edition from Paizo Inc. a very solid 7.5 out of 10. All right, so that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also tell you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs right here on YouTube as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news and first looks at said tabletop games. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, here's hoping you have plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, you're still here. Well, while you're kicking it, how about subscribing to the Gaming Gang channel? Or seeing the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch? Or finding out what YouTube recommends you check out here at my channel? And of course, don't forget, get your geek on at thegaminggang.com.